Think about the last time you truly paused, not just physically, but mentally. No distractions, no noise, no endless scroll. Just you, your breath, and the quiet. It's rare, isn't it? In a world that glorifies hustle, where busyness is worn like a badge of honor, stillness has become something we almost fear. We fill every second with movement, with sound, with stimulation, as if stopping would mean falling behind. But what if I told you that the most powerful people in history, the ones who shaped empires, weathered storms, and left legacies that lasted millennia, knew something we've forgotten? They understood that real strength isn't found in constant motion. It's found in the pause. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome at its height, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That journal, now known as Meditations, wasn't meant for the world to read. It was his personal refuge, a place to practice the stillness that fueled his clarity amid chaos. While others lost themselves in the frenzy of power, he returned again and again to one quiet truth. Mastery of the self begins with mastering the art of doing nothing. Not laziness, not avoidance, but the deliberate, intentional stillness that lets you see clearly, act wisely, and stand unshaken when everything around you is spinning. This video is about that untold thread of power, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't rush, doesn't react. From the Stoics of ancient Rome to the thinkers, leaders, and even modern-day innovators who have shaped our world, there's a hidden lineage of people who understood that stillness isn't weakness. It's the foundation of resilience, focus, and emotional mastery. We'll uncover how they cultivated it, why it's more urgent now than ever, and how you can tap into this same source of quiet strength. Because in a world that never stops moving, the ability to be still isn't just a luxury, it's the ultimate advantage. While Rome burned, Marcus wrote in his journal. Not frantic orders, not desperate pleas, just measured words, steady as his breath. The emperor who commanded legions, who held the fate of an empire in his hands, spent his rarest resource, time, on stillness. His meditations weren't grand speeches or battle plans. They were whispers to himself, a practice of returning to what he called the peace of the blue sky, that unchanging clarity above life's storms. Imagine the weight he carried, plagues, wars, betrayals. Yet his greatest weapon wasn't the sword or the Senate. It was his ability to step back, to observe his own thoughts like clouds passing, without being swept away by them. That's the paradox of Stoic stillness. It's not passive. It's the discipline of choosing where to direct your attention when every instinct screams to react. Modern leaders tweet in fury at midnight, chase headlines, confuse busyness with progress. Marcus, though, he lost sons to illness, faced revolts, watched Rome crumble, and still carved out space each morning to ask himself, what is in my control? Not the chaos around him, but his judgment, his actions, his breath. That's why his words outlasted his empire. Here's the question that cuts deeper. When was the last time you truly paused before reacting? Not just to crises, but to the tiny irritations that hijack your day. The rude comment, the missed deadline, the unexpected delay. Stoic stillness isn't about ignoring reality. It's about refusing to let reality dictate your inner state. Marcus called it the citadel of the mind. Build that, and no external force can storm the gates. Think of a modern CEO facing a stock crash or a parent navigating a toddler's meltdown. The principle hasn't changed. The ones who thrive aren't those who react fastest, but those who respond wisest. Stillness creates the space between stimulus and action, and in that space you'll find power no title or trophy can give you. the same power Marcus found while ink met parchment, as flames flickered on the horizon. A ship's captain can't command the wind, but they can adjust the sails. That's the heart of the Stoic dichotomy of control, a concept so simple it's almost deceptive, yet so profound it reshapes how we navigate life's storms. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, put it plainly in his Enchiridion: some things are up to us and some are not. The wind not up to us. The sails, absolutely. Stillness isn't about pretending the storm doesn't exist. It's about knowing where to place your hands when the waves hit. Take an athlete before a championship game. The crowd's roar, the opponent's skill, even the referee's calls, none of it's in their control, but their breath, their focus, the ritual they use to steady their nerves. That's their domain. Legendary basketball player Michael Jordan was known for closing his eyes and taking slow, deliberate breaths at the free throw line, tuning out the chaos around him. He wasn't just calming his body, he was anchoring himself in what he could influence. The Stoics would have called that wisdom. Now, flip the script to your own life. What uncontrollable thing hijacked your energy this week? The traffic jam that made you late, the co-worker's snide remark, the news headline that left you seething. Here's the uncomfortable truth: we spend more time raging against the wind than adjusting our sails. Epictetus warned his students, when you long for things not up to you, you'll be shackled. That's the irony. The more we try to control the uncontrollable, the less control we actually have over our peace. But stillness isn't surrender, it's strategic. Imagine two people stuck in the same airport delay. One refreshes the departure board obsessively, groans at every announcement, and texts everyone about the injustice. The other pulls out a book, calls a friend to catch up, or simply watches the sunlight through the terminal windows. Same delay, different experience. The difference isn't circumstance, it's the recognition of where their agency truly lies. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. The world will throw chaos at you, that's its job. Your job, to build an inner citadel so unshakable that chaos doesn't get a vote in your peace." The Stoics didn't preach indifference, they practiced selective attention. Like a sculptor ignoring the noise of the marketplace to focus on the chisel in their hand, they knew mastery begins with knowing what to ignore. So here's the challenge. Next time you catch yourself clenching over something outside your control, pause. Ask Epictetus' question: is this up to me? If not, exhale, redirect that energy to what is. That's where your power lies, not in the storm, but in the stillness between the waves. Seneca's letters reveal a secret: anger dies in delay. The Roman philosopher who served as an advisor to Emperor Nero knew the destructive power of unchecked emotion, but he also knew something far more valuable: the power of the pause. In his essay on anger, he wrote, "No one is angry by choice. That's the key. Anger, frustration, even fear, they're reflexes, lightning-fast reactions to whatever life throws at us. But between that spark and the explosion, there's a sliver of time, what Seneca called the first moment. And in that moment, stillness becomes your greatest ally." Picture this: someone cuts you off in traffic, your pulse spikes, your jaw clenches, the reaction is instantaneous. But what if, instead of honking or shouting, you took just 10 seconds to breathe? Seneca's insight was that emotions, left unchecked, snowball. But when you insert even the smallest pause, you break the chain. The heat of the moment cools. The knee-jerk reaction loses its grip. That's not suppression, it's interception. You're not ignoring the emotion, you're choosing not to let it steer. This principle isn't confined to ancient scrolls. Modern CEOs and leaders use what's called the 10-minute rule. Before responding to a provoking email, before making a high-stakes decision, they step away. They create space because in that space, clarity replaces chaos. Think of it like a muddy river. If you let the sediment settle, the water becomes clear enough to see through. Seneca's pause does the same for the mind. The irony, we live in a world that rewards speed, instant replies, rapid-fire decisions, snap judgments. But the people who thrive, the ones who lead with wisdom instead of impulse, understand that true control isn't about reacting faster. It's about responding better. Seneca put it bluntly, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Not denial, not avoidance, just a deliberate moment to let the storm pass so you can see the horizon again. So here's the challenge. Where could you insert a pause today? Not just in anger, but in doubt, in stress, in any moment where the world feels like it's pulling you under. Maybe it's counting to 5 before answering a loaded question. Maybe it's walking around the block before sending that text. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion, it's to reclaim the space between feeling and action. Because in that space, you'll find something rare, the power to choose. Before setting sail, ancient Stoic sailors would close their eyes and picture the worst raging storms, broken masts, waves crashing over the deck. But here's the twist, they weren't practicing pessimism, they were sharpening their calm. This was premeditatio malorum, the Stoic art of negative visualization, not to dwell on fear, but to dissolve its power. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. In other words, rehearse life's harshest possibilities before they happen, and you'll meet them not with panic, but with readiness. Consider how elite military units train. Navy SEAL don't just hope for the best, they drill for catastrophe, failed equipment, ambushes, freezing water. By mentally and physically rehearsing disaster, they strip it of its surprise. When chaos comes, their response isn't, "This shouldn't be happening," it's, "I've seen this before." That's the Stoic secret. What you anticipate, you can navigate. The storm you've imagined won't drown you, it'll teach you to swim. Now, apply this to ordinary life. What's your storm? A job loss, a difficult conversation, a health scare. The Stoics wouldn't tell you to ignore those fears. They'd urge you to walk through them in your mind, step by step. Picture the worst-case scenario, not to catastrophize, but to ask, if this happened, what would I do? Suddenly, the monster under the bed loses its fangs. You've already faced it in your mind, so reality holds no unseen terrors. Seneca took this further. He'd practice poverty, wearing torn clothes and eating meager meals, not because he enjoyed hardship, but to prove to himself, even if I lose everything, I'll still be okay. That's the freedom negative visualization offers, the realization that most of what we fear is survivable. The modern equivalent, regularly backing up your files, keeping an emergency fund, or even rehearsing a tough talk in the mirror. Preparation isn't paranoia, it's peace of mind. So here's the invitation. Pick one challenge looming in your life, close your eyes and play it out, not as a victim but as a problem solver. What's the first step you'd take? The second, Marcus wrote, the obstacle is the way. By visualizing the obstacle, you turn it into a path, because when you've stood in the storm before it arrives, you'll never be at its mercy. Epictetus, the slave-turned teacher, built an inner citadel not of stone but of thought. Born in chains, his body owned by another, he discovered a truth that would outlast empires. No one can enslave your mind unless you hand them the key. His teachings revolved around one radical idea, what he called the discipline of assent, the moment between an external event and your internal reaction. Men are disturbed not by things, he wrote, but by the views they take of them. A missed train isn't the problem, it's the narrative you attach to it. This ruins everything. That fuels the fire. Stillness for Epictetus wasn't about sitting quietly. It was about intercepting those automatic judgments before they could storm your peace. Consider Buddhist monks trained in the art of focus. Researchers have placed them in rooms with blaring alarms, flashing lights, even bursts of cold air, all while measuring their brain activity. The result, their neural responses to distraction were barely a flicker. Not because they didn't hear the noise, but because they'd mastered the discipline of not assent, the choice not to let external chaos dictate internal calm. Epictetus would have nodded in recognition. His entire philosophy was a training manual for mental fortification, a way to build walls no circumstance could breach. Now think of your own mental citadel. What weakens its walls? Maybe it's the coworker who always seems to push your buttons, or the relentless ping of notifications pulling your attention in 10 directions. Epictetus would say the issue isn't the coworker or the phone, it's your assent to their power over you. Every time you think, they're ruining my day, or I have to check that message, you're handing them a brick to add to your own prison. Here's the liberating twist. The discipline of assent isn't about suppressing reactions. It's about slowing them down long enough to ask, is this thought true? Is it useful? Imagine your mind as a courtroom. Every external event a criticism, a setback, even a compliment stands trial before you give it the gavel of your attention. Most don't deserve a life sentence in your psyche. Epictetus taught this to Roman aristocrats who'd never known physical hardship, yet were enslaved by their own tempers, fears, and desires. His lesson, chains come in many forms. The ones that bind your mind are the only ones that matter because they're the only ones you can unlock yourself. So the next time life shouts, practice the art of pause. Withhold your assent just long enough to remember the power was never in the noise, it's in the silence between it and you. At sunrise, Marcus Aurelius would rise not with groans or distractions, but with a question etched in stillness. What is the work of a human being today? No scrolls, no servants, no rush, just the quiet reckoning of purpose before the world could make its demands. This wasn't mere routine, it was a ritual of reclamation. The Stoics didn't just wake up, they woke up to their values, their agency, their fleeting time. Seneca put it bluntly in a letter to his friend, "You own the day if you own its beginning." Fast forward 2,000 years, and Silicon Valley's so-called 5 a.m. club echoes the same principle. Executives, entrepreneurs, and artists carve out sacred hours before dawn, not for productivity hacks, but for the clarity that only silence can bring. But here's where modern hustle culture misses the mark. The Stoics weren't chasing efficiency, they were practicing presence. Marcus didn't review his to-do list at dawn, he reviewed his character. When you arise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. So what did a Stoic morning actually look like? First, negative visualization, not to dwell on fear, but to dissolve entitlement. Before stepping into the day, they'd briefly confront life's fragility. What if today brings loss, criticism, or hardship? By naming these possibilities, they stripped them of their power to shock. Next came intention setting. No vague goals like, be productive. Stoics asked sharper questions. What virtue will I practice today? Patience with my colleague, courage in that difficult conversation. Finally, anchoring in nature's rhythms. Marcus often wrote of watching the sunrise, not as a poet, but as a philosopher, reminding himself that each day was a microcosm of life itself, brief, beautiful, and slipping away. Now contrast that with the modern default, waking to a barrage of notifications, letting the outside world dictate your inner state before your feet even hit the floor. The Stoic antidote, Seneca's first-hour rule, a buffer between waking and reacting. He advised his students to take possession of your own mind before the world could lay claim to it. Think of it like stretching before a sprint. You wouldn't bolt from bed straight into a race, yet we do this mentally every day. Here's the challenge. What if your first hour didn't belong to your inbox, your calendar, or the headlines? What if it belonged to you, not in the form of rigid self-optimization, but as a space to ask Marcus' question, what is my work today? Not your tasks, not your deadlines, your human work, the kind that can't be measured in outputs, only in integrity. Because when you anchor your mornings in stillness, you don't just start the day. You steer it. To the Stoics, a leaf falls as it should, and so do you. This isn't mysticism, it's physics. They called it logos, the invisible current of rational order humming through the universe, stitching every star, season, and human struggle into a coherent whole. Glean's successor to Zeno captured it in his hymn to Zeus. All nature's works obey your law. Nothing occurs apart from you. Not blind fate, not random chaos, but a pattern so precise, even suffering had its place in the weave. Modern science echoes this in surprising ways. Quantum physicists speak of hidden variables, unseen forces guiding particles' paths. Ecologists trace how forests self-regulate, how predators and prey balance without a planner. The Stoics would nod, logos in action. When Einstein said, "God does not play dice with the universe," he was channeling a similar intuition, that beneath life's apparent randomness, there's a rhythm worth trusting. Here's where it gets practical. Resistance to logos is the root of most suffering. Picture a swimmer fighting the current, exhausting themselves to stay in place, while just beside them, another swimmer turns sideways and lets the same current carry them forward. The Stoic question isn't, "Why is this happening to me?" It's, "How does this fit the larger pattern?" Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The cucumber is bitter, then throw it away." Are there brambles in your path? Then go around. No drama, no existential crisis, just adjustments to nature's terrain. Consider a surgeon performing a complex operation. Their hands don't rage against the body's anatomy. They work with it, trusting the inherent logic of veins, muscles, and bone. The Stoics applied this same principle to life. When adversity strikes a failed project, a broken relationship, they didn't waste energy shouting at reality. They asked, "Given this new condition, what's possible now?" Like a river finding its way around rocks, they flowed where logos led. So where are you resisting life's flow, clinging to a plan that's clearly unraveling? Wrestling with emotions that insist on being felt, the Stoic invitation isn't passivity, it's alignment. Logos doesn't erase effort, it redirects it. Think of a sailor trimming sails to the wind's shift, not cursing its direction. Or a jazz musician weaving dissonance into harmony, trusting the song's deeper logic. Stillness, then, becomes a kind of listening to the quiet pulse of what is. Not to surrender agency, but to exercise it wisely. As Epictetus put it, don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you'll go on well. The leaf falls, the river bends, and you're not just in the pattern, you're part of its making. When barbarians massed at Rome's borders, Marcus Aurelius didn't reach for his sword first, he reached for his journal. While advisors clamored for immediate action, the emperor carved out moments of stillness to remind himself, "Be like the rock against which the waves break." It stands unmoved and the crashing waters fall still around it. That image wasn't just poetry, it was strategy. The greatest leaders know that panic spreads faster than any order ever could. Composure, on the other hand, is contagious in its own way, a quiet force that steadies everyone in its orbit. History's most effective commanders understood this paradox. the less you react, the more you lead. Take Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War's darkest days. He'd draft furious letters to his generals, scathing, impatient, blistering with frustration, then tuck them away in his desk unsent. These hot letters weren't failures of temper, they were exercises in restraint. By giving himself space between emotion and action, Lincoln avoided turning personal exasperation into national policy. The lesson: stillness isn't the absence of urgency, it's the discipline of channeling urgency wisely. Modern neuroscience backs this ancient insight. Studies of elite military units reveal that under fire, the most effective officers aren't those with the fastest reflexes, but those who maintain what researchers call cognitive quiet, the ability to silence mental noise long enough to make deliberate choices. Their heart rates stay steady, their decisions, though swift, aren't rushed. Like Marcus Rock, they provide a surface for chaos to break against, rather than joining the chaos themselves. Now, zoom out to everyday leadership, whether you're managing a team, a classroom, or a household. The storms may be smaller, but the principle holds. People mirror the emotional tone of those in charge. A CEO checking their phone during a crisis meeting teaches employees that distraction is acceptable. A parent taking a breath before responding to a child's meltdown models emotional regulation. Even in virtual spaces where tensions flare instantly, the simple act of pausing before replying can diffuse conflicts before they escalate. So here's the challenge: what's the barbarian at your gate right now? A high-stakes project deadline, a fractured team dynamic, a personal setback that threatens to cloud your judgment. Channel the Stoic commander's calm. Write the angry email, then delete it. Voice the sharp criticism, but only after you've walked it around the block. Stillness doesn't mean inaction. It means action stripped of ego and haste. As Marcus scribbled in his tent by torchlight, the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The obstacle is the way, but only if you meet it with eyes wide open and pulse steady. Pliny the Younger built what he called his study villa, a secluded space with one purpose: uninterrupted thought. No bustling servants, no city noise, just a quiet room overlooking the garden where words could flow without being shattered by the outside world. It was his rebellion against the distractions of ancient Rome, a physical declaration that deep work required deep stillness. Fast forward 2,000 years, and we've traded marble walls for glowing screens, yet the battle remains the same. Our minds are more scattered than ever, not because we lack discipline, but because we're swimming in an ocean of notifications, algorithms, and endless content designed to fracture our attention. Seneca warned of this exact trap long before smartphones existed. The mind that is untroubled and tranquil has the power to roam into all the parts of its life, but the minds of the distracted are like madmen. They see things that aren't there and mistake illusions for reality. Consider the modern deep work movement: writers who disable Wi-Fi to draft novels, programmers who wear noise-canceling headphones for hours, even students who lock their phones away to study. They're not just practicing productivity, they're staging a silent revolt against a world that profits from their distraction. The irony: the most valuable resource in the digital age isn't information, it's the ability to ignore it. Every ping, every scroll, every just one more click is a tiny surrender of your sovereignty. The Stoics knew this instinctively. They didn't have social media, but they faced their own version of mental clutter: gossip in the forum, the pressure of public opinion, the endless bids for their time and energy. Their solution wasn't to fight the noise head-on. It was to build inner quiet strong enough to render the noise irrelevant. So here's the challenge: what's one distraction you could delete, not forever, but for an hour today? Not the obvious time wasters, but the subtle thieves. The news app that fuels your anxiety, the group chat that demands instant reactions, even the productive tasks that masquerade as urgency while stealing focus from what truly matters. Epictetus offered a razor-sharp filter. If it's not your business, don't make it your thought. That ancient advice cuts through digital chaos like a scalpel. The next time your phone buzzes with someone else's agenda, ask, is this my business? If not, let it pass like a ship in the night, visible but never docking in your mind. Stillness, then, isn't just about sitting quietly. It's about reclaiming the right to decide where your attention goes. Imagine your focus as a spotlight. Right now, the world holds a dozen remote controls, all jamming buttons to swing that light wherever it serves them. The Stoic move: take back the controls. Build your own study villa, even if it's just a corner table with your phone face down, because in a war for your mind, silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Marcus penned meditations not in the comfort of a palace, but in the blood and dust of battlefields, his body aching from old wounds, his empire ravaged by plague. One of history's most powerful men spent his nights writing not of conquests, but of acceptance. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's the heart of amor fati, the Stoic love of fate. Not passive resignation, but an active embrace. This, too, is part of my story. How will I use it? Consider Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps, stripped of everything but his mind. While others crumbled under the weight of suffering, he observed something extraordinary. Those who found meaning in their pain survived longer, not because the pain lessened, but because their relationship to it transformed. They didn't ask, why me? They asked, what now? Frankl's insight mirrored Marcus. You have power over your mind, not outside events. The barbed wire couldn't be removed, but the prison of despair could. Modern medicine now confirms this ancient wisdom. Patients who reframe chronic pain as a signal to adapt rather than an enemy to rage against report higher resilience. A study of burn victims found those who practiced mindfulness alongside treatment healed faster. Their bodies still felt the fire, but their minds weren't consumed by it. The Stoics would have recognized this immediately. Suffering is inevitable, but struggle is optional. The difference lies in stillness, the pause between "this hurts" and "what can I learn from this hurt?" So here's the question, not as a theoretical exercise, but as a lived challenge. What pain, physical, emotional, or circumstantial, could you metamorphose today? Not ignore, not endure, but alchemize. Maybe it's the throbbing knee that reminds you to slow down and notice the autumn leaves, the grief that carves deeper wells for compassion. Even the daily commute that becomes a pocket of solitude if you let it. Epictetus, who lived with a crippled leg from slavery, put it plainly: lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. The obstacle is never the obstacle, it's the raw material. Like a sculptor staring at a block of marble, the Stoics saw suffering as the chisel, not the prison. Your turn to ask, what will I carve from this? Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, often reminded his students, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. At first glance, it sounds like simple etiquette, but dig deeper, and you'll find Prosochet, the Stoic art of attention. This wasn't just about politeness, it was a radical exercise in self-mastery. To truly listen without rehearsing your response, without judging, without drifting into distraction, is to wield stillness as a superpower in conversation. Epictetus took it further. If you speak only when your words are more valuable than silence, you'll never regret speech. Imagine the weight of that filter. Most of us clutter the air with half-formed thoughts, reflexive opinions, nervous chatter. The Stoics, they treated words like currency, spending only what was necessary and never in deficit. Consider how therapists use silence. A skilled counselor knows the space between sentences isn't empty, it's fertile ground. When they reflect back what you've said without adding their own narrative, it's not passive, it's active listening. That pause invites clarity, often revealing solutions the speaker didn't realize they already held. The Stoics practiced a similar discipline. When someone spoke to them, they weren't just waiting for their turn to talk. They were fully present, absorbing not just words but the intentions behind them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." In heated debates, his revenge was stillness, refusing to match anger with anger, interruption with interruption. Now, think of your last difficult conversation. Maybe it was a disagreement with a partner, a tense work meeting, or even a child's emotional outburst. How much of your mental energy was spent crafting counterarguments instead of genuinely hearing? The modern world trains us to respond at lightning speed. Texts demand instant replies, meetings reward quick thinkers, but the Stoics measured speed differently. A swift mind wasn't one that reacted fastest, but one that discerned fastest, knowing when to speak, when to wait, and when silence itself was the wisest reply. Here's the challenge: who in your life needs your full listening today? Not the performative kind where you nod while mentally drafting your next email, but the prosaic kind, where your attention is a gift, unhurried and undivided. It might be the coworker who keeps circling the same frustration, the friend who drops hints about struggling, or even the stranger whose story you've never paused long enough to hear. Epictetus warned, "We are given one mouth but two ears," as a sign we should listen more than we say. In a culture that equates airtime with importance, choosing stillness in conversation isn't just restraint. It's revolution. Gladiators stepped into the sand knowing one truth: panic was deadlier than any opponent. Before the roar of the crowd, before the clash of steel, they'd stand motionless, chests rising slow, eyes fixed, breath steady. Not just to conserve energy, but to master the moment. Historians note how their trainers drilled them in techniques borrowed directly from Stoic philosophers. Controlled breathing to quiet the pulse, visualization to rehearse victory, even mantras to anchor focus. Marcus Aurelius, who watched these games as emperor, saw beyond the spectacle. He wrote of life as the art of wrestling, not just with opponents but with the chaos of our own minds. The arena, whether of sand or circumstance, rewards those who move from stillness first. Modern sports psychology confirms what the ancients practiced instinctually. Take Kobe Bryant's infamous zero-expression rule. Whether draining a game-winning shot or airballing a critical free throw, his face stayed eerily calm. Teammates described it as the Mamba mask, a deliberate detachment from emotion that let him perform under staggering pressure. Scientists now call this the quiet eye phenomenon, the fraction of a second when elite athletes' gaze stabilizes before a decisive move. Basketball players locking onto the rim, golfers freezing before a putt, even surgeons pausing mid-incision. It's the same principle Marcus observed in Rome's fighters. Peak performance blooms from cultivated calm. But here's what changes the game. Stillness isn't about suppressing nerves, it's about redirecting them. When researchers monitored heart rates of Olympic sharpshooters, they found something surprising. The marksmen weren't perfectly calm, their pulses spiked like anyone else's. The difference, they'd trained to exhale slowly during the shot, using the breath as an anchor. Ancient gladiators did the same, sinking strikes with exhales to steady their hands. Marcus hinted at this in Meditations. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The obstacle, racing heart, trembling fingers, becomes the tool when met with awareness. So where's your arena? Not a coliseum or court, perhaps, but somewhere pressure finds you. A boardroom presentation, a high-stakes conversation. even the solitude of a blank page demanding your best work. The Stoic gladiator's strategy still applies. Name the nerves, then breathe into them. Before the meeting, try the triple exhale, 3 slow breaths out, each longer than the last, resetting your baseline. When the critic's voice in your head shouts, borrow Cobb's mask, not to feel nothing, but to choose what deserves your reaction. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: pressure doesn't distort skill, it reveals preparation. The gladiator's stillness wasn't innate, it was rehearsed in endless drills until calm became reflex. Marcus didn't wake up wise, he wrote his reminders daily, ingraining them like muscle memory. Your turn. What's the one move, physical, mental, emotional, that would transform your performance if it flowed from stillness? Practice it not until you get it right, but until you can't get it wrong. The arena awaits. Seneca's candle burned late into the night, not for work but for reckoning. As the chaos of Rome settled into silence, he'd pose a single question to the shadows. What evils did you cure today? Not what did you achieve or what did you earn? But what wounds in yourself or others did you begin to heal? This was the Stoic examination of conscience, a nightly ritual of honest reflection. Not self-flagellation, not tallying wins and losses, but a quiet audit of where your power had truly flowed that day. Marcus Aurelius described it as retiring into yourself, a return to the inner sanctum where no masks were needed. Modern journaling trends borrow from this ancient practice, though often with a crucial difference. Gratitude lists and productivity trackers focus on accumulation, what I gained, what I crossed off. The Stoics, though, were miners digging for something deeper, what I released. Seneca would review conversations, asking, did I speak from ego or wisdom? Epictetus scanned for moments he'd handed his piece to external forces, a slight, a delay, someone else's mood. The goal wasn't guilt but calibration. Like a sailor adjusting sails by the stars, they used the night to correct course. Consider a surgeon scrubbing out after an operation. The ritual isn't just about cleanliness, it's a mental transition from intensity to integration. The Stoic night review served the same purpose, by revisiting the day's events with detachment. Why did that remark bother me? Was my haste truly necessary? They dissolved lingering tensions before they could harden into habits. Studies on sleep hygiene now validate this. People who journal worries before bed experience deeper rest. The Stoics, it seems, were early pioneers of cognitive offloading. So here's the invitation. Tonight, before sleep claims you, steal 5 minutes from the dark. Ask not just what went well, but what did I clutch too tightly? The frustration in traffic, the craving for recognition, the argument you rehearsed in your head long after it ended. These are the evils Seneca urged us to cure. Not by fighting them, but by loosening their grip through examination. Marcus wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Nightly reflection was his way of rinsing the day's stains, ensuring tomorrow began clean. Your journal doesn't need eloquence, it needs honesty. A single sentence can hold the key. Today, I let a stranger's tone dictate my mood. That admission, made without judgment, is the first step toward reclaiming your stillness. Because the unexamined life isn't just unlivable, it's exhausting. And the examined one, that's where freedom takes root. When Rome's economy crashed, Stoics didn't rush to hoard gold or curse the markets. They reached for their philosophy scrolls. While merchants wailed over lost fortunes, thinkers like Musonius Rufus taught a radical idea. True prosperity isn't measured in coins, but in how little the loss of coins disturbs you. This wasn't austerity or asceticism. It was the doctrine of preferred indifference, the Stoic distinction between what's nice to have and what's essential to your peace. Wealth preferred, poverty dispreferred. but neither could touch your core worth unless you handed them the keys to your mind. Warren Buffett, the billionaire who's weathered 7 decades of market crashes, channels this same stoic calm. His famous advice, be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful, it isn't just investment strategy. It's a masterclass in emotional detachment from financial turbulence. During the 2008 crisis, while panicked investors sold at losses, Buffett methodically bought undervalued stocks, not because he knew the exact bottom, but because he'd rehearsed this scenario mentally for years. Like a stoic visualizing poverty before it arrived, he'd written in his shareholder letters, "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked." The crash wasn't his enemy, it was his litmus test. Here's where modern money anxiety meets ancient wisdom. The fear isn't really about numbers in an account, it's about the stories we attach to them. If I lose this, I'm a failure. If I don't hit that target, I'll be exposed. The Stoics would say the real danger isn't market volatility, it's letting that volatility dictate your self-worth. Epictetus, born into slavery, framed it bluntly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That doesn't mean rejecting money, it means refusing to let money define you. Think of 2 people receiving the same bad financial news. One spirals into doom scrolling and sleepless nights. The other acknowledges the setback, then asks, "What's within my control right now?" Maybe it's cutting discretionary spending, upskilling for better opportunities, or simply recognizing that their value isn't tied to a portfolio. The difference isn't their bank balance, it's their relationship to that balance. So here's the challenge. What financial fear have you allowed to set up camp in your mind? Is it the dread of retirement shortfalls, the comparison to a friend's new car, or the irrational guilt over a small indulgence? Write it down, then apply the Stoic double filter. Is this in my control? If not, what narrative am I feeding by worrying about it? Because the ultimate financial freedom isn't amassing infinite wealth, it's knowing no market crash can bankrupt your peace. Pierre Hadot called philosophy a spiritual exercise, not just thought, but a training of the soul. That shift changes everything, because when we treat stillness as mental preparation rather than empty space, we unlock its hidden function, creativity's incubator. Seneca saw this clearly when he wrote of otium anime, leisure for the soul, not idleness but the fertile void where insights gestate. The mind must be given time to wander, he advised, for it is in wandering that it finds. Consider Einstein aboard his small sailboat, drifting for hours with no apparent purpose. Those empty stretches weren't wasted time, they were the birthplace of relativity. His famous thought experiments, riding a beam of light, falling in an elevator, emerged not from frantic calculation, but from what he called combinatory play. The Stoics would have recognized the pattern immediately, just as Marcus Aurelius used dawn reflections to distill wisdom from silence. Creative geniuses throughout history have relied on unstructured mental space to solve problems linear thinking couldn't crack. Neuroscience now maps this ancient intuition, the brain's default mode network active when we're daydreaming or resting, is where unexpected connections fuse. Archimedes shouting "Eureka!" in his bath, Newton observing the falling apple, even Steve Jobs' calligraphy classes leading to Max typography, all share a common thread. Breakthroughs arrived not in forced concentration, but in the surrender to stillness. The mind, when released from immediate demands, begins its deepest work. So here's the paradox. We chase productivity hacks and multitasking, yet history's most enduring ideas emerged from what looks like doing nothing. The Stoic secret: they didn't leave stillness to chance. They scheduled it like a critical meeting. Seneca would block off days for conversations with myself, While Epictetus taught students to guard their attention like a sacred grove, no trivial intrusions allowed. What idea in your life needs that same undivided attention? Not more research, not another brainstorming session, but the courage to sit quietly and let it speak. The next time you hit a creative wall, try this. Set a timer for 20 minutes. No devices, no notes, just you and the question. Like water clearing when undisturbed, the answer often rises precisely when we stop chasing it. The Stoics knew what modern science confirms. Stillness isn't the absence of thought. It's thought at its most potent. Scipio Africanus, the Roman general who defeated Hannibal, would meditate in his tent for hours before battle. While his officers paced nervously, anticipating the clash with Carthage's forces, Scipio sat motionless, eyes closed, breath steady, mind clear. Historians recorded this not as superstition, but as strategic patience. He understood what modern military strategists confirm. The fiercest battles aren't fought with swords, but with stillness. Before destroying Carthage, he first had to master the chaos within himself. Marcus Aurelius called it the victory over oneself, the quiet triumph of returning to center when every instinct screams to react. Imagine a chess grandmaster in a championship match. The clock ticks, the crowd holds its breath, and the weight of every move hangs in the air. Yet the master's face remains unreadable, their hands steady. It's not that they don't feel pressure, they've simply learned to use it. The stillness isn't passive, it's a tactical advantage. Every second of pause is a chance to see the board anew, to spot the move emotion would have blinded them to. This is Stoic warfare at its finest. The external conflict, whether on a battlefield, in a boardroom, or at the kitchen table, is just the surface. The real fight is the one waged in the mind. When someone insults you, the immediate sting isn't the injury, it's the urge to retaliate. When plans collapse, the frustration isn't the setback, it's the stories we tell ourselves about what it means. The obstacle is the way isn't just a mantra, it's a battle plan. By refusing to let external chaos dictate internal calm, you disarm every would-be adversary. So here's the question that cuts deeper than any blade. What inner enemy have you been feeding? Is it the voice that whispers, "You're not ready," before a big opportunity? The resentment that replays an old argument like a broken record? Or the impatience that turns minor inconveniences into full-scale emergencies? Scipio didn't conquer Carthage by charging blindly. He studied its weaknesses, fortified his position, and struck with precision. Your inner Carthage is no different. The next time tension rises, try this. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Breathe as if you have all the time in the world, because in that moment, you do. Marcus wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Stillness is how you choose the hue, not by suppressing the storm, but by becoming the eye of it. The world will always give you reasons to react. Your power lies in the pause before you do. When his son died, Cato the Younger grieved deeply, then stood before the Senate the next day quoting Stoic maxims on impermanence. The crowd murmured at his composure, mistaking it for coldness, but those who knew Stoicism understood. His tears flowed freely, yet his hands remained open. That's the paradox of non-attachment, not the absence of love, but the refusal to chain what you love to your own expectations. Epictetus put it bluntly, "Is the cup broken?" Remember, it was already broken when you received it. Every cherished thing, relationships, possessions, even life itself, comes with an invisible crack. The Stoic art lies in holding them gently, knowing their fragility before fate reminds you. Modern minimalism movements echo this ancient wisdom, though often missing its depth. Decluttering your home isn't just about aesthetics or efficiency, it's a training ground for the mind. when you release the extra jacket you might wear someday or the gadget you've outgrown, you're not just making space on a shelf. You're practicing the muscle of non-attachment, preparing it for life's heavier losses. The Japanese practice of danshari, discarding what no longer serves you, isn't far from Seneca's advice. It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much of it clinging to what we've outgrown. But here's where Stoicism parts ways with mere minimalism. It's not about owning fewer things, it's about needing fewer things. Diogenes lived in a barrel not because barrels were virtuous, but to prove a point. When you've made peace with having nothing, no one can take anything from you. The Roman general Scipio Aemilianus would walk through bustling markets whispering to himself, "All this isn't necessary. I don't need any of this," not to scorn abundance, but to test his freedom from it. So what's the possession, physical or mental, that clutters your peace? Maybe it's the old resentment you rehearse like a favorite song, or the promotion you've tied to your self-worth. Even the smartphone in your hand right now, how often does its pull feel less like a tool and more like a tether? The Stoics would urge you to hold it lightly. Not to discard it, but to remember, like Cato's sun, like Epictetus' cup, like every breath in your lungs, it was never truly yours to keep. The practice isn't deprivation. It's liberation. Seneca warned of busy idleness, the frantic motion that gives the illusion of purpose while emptying the soul. Today, we don't pace marble halls, we scroll. The glow of screens has replaced the flicker of oil lamps, but the trap remains the same, mistaking constant stimulation for living. Life is long if you know how to use it, he wrote, a dagger to the heart of modern distraction. Imagine if Seneca could see us now, thumbing through endless feeds, mistaking clicks for choices, likes for meaning. The Stoics' new distraction wasn't just inconvenient, it was existential theft. Every moment lost to mindless consumption is a fragment of life you'll never reclaim. Consider the rise of digital detox retreats, luxury cabins where executives pay thousands to surrender their phones at the door. It's ironic, we've created a world so saturated with noise that silence has become a premium commodity. The ancient Stoics, though, didn't need wilderness getaways to practice presence. For them, stillness wasn't a destination, it was a discipline woven into daily life. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire without ever owning a device that could ping him at midnight. His journal reflects no yearning for escape, only a relentless commitment to showing up fully, deeply, to the life in front of him. Here's the uncomfortable truth: technology isn't the problem. Our relationship to it is. The same apps that drain attention can also nourish it. Guided meditations, philosophy podcasts, letters from Seneca delivered daily to your inbox. The real question isn't, how do I quit my phone, but what do I invite into my attention? Epictetus framed it perfectly. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. A tweet isn't inherently stressful. It's the compulsion to check it, the itch to respond, the stories we spin about what it means that hijack our peace. So let's get practical. Pick one app, not the obvious time waster, but the subtle thief. Maybe it's the news feed that fuels your anxiety, or the messaging platform that blurs the line between available and on call. For a week, experiment with boundaries, turn off notifications, designate Seneca hours, windows where the phone stays face down. Notice what happens when you reclaim those slivers of time. Do you fidget? Does boredom feel like withdrawal? That's the muscle of stillness atrophying. But here's the good news: muscles can be rebuilt. The Stoics didn't reject tools, they mastered their use. A ship's rudder is useless unless the captain knows how to steer. Your phone is no different. The next time you reach for it, pause. Ask Marcus' question: is this essential to my work as a human being? Sometimes the answer will be yes. often you'll catch yourself before the current sweeps you away, because presence isn't the absence of technology. It's the wisdom to know when to let go. Marcus healed Rome's sick without collapsing into despair, a feat more remarkable than any battlefield victory. While plague ravaged the city, the emperor moved through hospital tents with steady hands and an unshaken presence. Not detached, not indifferent, but anchored in what he called reserved compassion, the Stoic art of caring deeply without being consumed. His journal reveals the secret. Kindness is invincible, provided it's sincere, not fawning or theatrical. That distinction changes everything. Compassion isn't weakness, it's strength channeled wisely, like a surgeon's scalpel, precise, purposeful, never wielded in frenzy. Modern nurses embody this same principle. Watch a seasoned ER nurse during a code blue. Their hands move swiftly, but their breath stays even. Between crises, they might step outside for 30 seconds, not to escape but to reset. Some touch a cool wall to ground themselves, others whisper a mantra. These aren't just stress hacks, they are acts of metriopatheia, the Stoic practice of measured emotion. Ancient physicians like Galen prescribed it to prevent burnout. Tend to the patient, not the pathology inside yourself. The suffering you witness isn't yours to carry, it's yours to meet with clarity. Here's where Stoic stillness transforms service from sacrifice to sustenance. Imagine two firefighters entering a burning building. One gasps at the heat, heart racing, vision narrowing with panic. The other acknowledges the danger but moves with economy, each breath measured, each step intentional. Both care, both risk their lives, but only one has the reserves to notice the child hiding under the bed. Reserved compassion isn't about feeling less, it's about preserving enough of yourself to be truly useful. Think of the caregiver who spent years at a loved one's sick. Their hands are gentle, their voice steady, yet their grief is no less real for being contained. This is what the Stoics meant by a love with a quiet mind. Not the absence of sorrow, but the refusal to let sorrow drown your ability to hold someone's hand. Seneca, who consoled grieving friends even as he mourned his own losses, wrote, "Tears fall, but the soul stands." So here's the question that matters. Who needs your calm presence today? Not your advice, your solutions, or even your empathy. Just the gift of your undivided, unshaken attention. Maybe it's the coworker who's one harsh word away from breaking, the child who needs you to listen more than lecture, even the stranger whose pain you'll witness in passing. You don't have to fix everything. Sometimes the most powerful service is simply standing firm in the storm, proving by your stillness that they won't be swept away alone. Stoics didn't track hours, they seized Kairos, the ancient Greek concept of the opportune moment. While modern productivity gurus obsess over schedules and efficiency, the Stoics measured time differently. It wasn't about how much you had, but how deeply you inhabited it. Seneca's On the Shortness of Life cuts to the core. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The thief isn't the clock. It's distraction, the way we fragment our attention across trivialities while the moments that matter slip by unnoticed. Consider the Pomodoro technique, that modern staple of time management. Its creator, Francesco Cirillo, didn't invent it in a boardroom. He discovered it with a tomato-shaped kitchen timer. The breakthrough wasn't the timer itself, but the realization that focused bursts of attention, punctuated by deliberate pauses, mirrored the natural rhythm of deep work. The Stoics would have recognized this instantly. Their practice of prosouche attention to the present moment wasn't about rigid intervals, but about recognizing when the mind was ripe for engagement and when it needed stillness to reset. Here's the twist: Kairos isn't just about productivity. It's about presence. Imagine two parents at a child's recital. One films the entire performance on their phone, eyes glued to the screen. The other sets the device aside, absorbing the fleeting magic of off-key notes and nervous smiles. Both experienced the same 20 minutes, but only one sees the Kairos. Seneca lamented how we postpone life, promising ourselves we'll truly live someday later. Yet the Stoics knew the only time we ever have is the moment unfolding now. So where's your Kairos hiding today? Not in the planner's meticulously blocked slots, but in the cracks between them, the unscripted conversation with a colleague that sparks an idea. The quiet morning minute before the house wakes when you taste your coffee instead of gulping it. Even the frustration that could be a doorway to patience if met with curiosity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. Not because the task is monumental, but because your attention is the brushstroke that colors its meaning." The next time you check the clock, ask Seneca's question, is this merely passing time or am I claiming it? A Pomodoro timer might help you focus, but only Kairos can teach you to live. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who hauled water by night to fund his studies by day, found his greatest teacher in the rhythm of waves. While others saw only water, he saw a masterclass in resilience, how each crest rose and fell without clinging to its shape, how the ocean absorbed storms yet never lost its depth. This was Stoic physics in action, not just the study of nature, but the practice of learning stillness from Earth's unshakable cadence. The ancients didn't separate philosophy from the physical world. They read the seasons like scripture. When Marcus Aurelius wrote of the view from above, imagining cities as ant hills and empires as fleeting specks, he wasn't dismissing human struggles. He was zooming out to the scale of mountains and rivers, where every panic and passion is smoothed by time's current. Modern science now quantifies what the Stoics sensed. Studies on forest bathing, the Japanese practice of mindful time in wooded areas, show measurable drops in cortisol and boosts in immune function. But the real magic isn't just in the trees, it's in the shift of attention they invite. A hiker navigating a rocky trail can't afford distracted thoughts. Each step demands presence. The scent of pine, the uneven ground underfoot, the way sunlight filters through leaves, these become anchors, pulling us into what psychologists call the embodied now. The Stoics would have recognized this instantly. Epictetus often told students to observe how dogs follow scent trails without second guessing, how birds build nests without doubting their skills. Nature doesn't agonize over the past or future, it simply is. Think of a thunderstorm rolling across a prairie. The grass bends but doesn't break. The soil drinks the rain without questioning its timing. Even the lightning, for all its violence, serves a purpose, clearing the air, sparking new growth. That's the lesson Earth offers. Resistance wastes energy, adaptation sustains it. Seneca wrote of sitting by waterfalls to recalibrate his sense of time, watching how water carved stone not through force, but through persistent presence. A CEO today might achieve the same by walking barefoot on dew-covered grass before dawn, letting the chill shock them awake to what's real. So here's the challenge: when did nature last quiet your mind? Not as scenery, but as teacher. Maybe it was the way a spider rebuilt its web after a storm, or how winter branches trusted spring's return. The Stoics didn't romanticize nature, they apprenticed themselves to it. A farmer doesn't rage against drought, they adjust their crops. A sailor doesn't curse the wind, they adjust their sails. Your turn, step outside, press your palm to bark and feel the slow pulse beneath. Notice how the world keeps turning without your worry. The earth has been here long before you, and it whispers the same secret to all who listen. Stillness isn't something you find. It's something you remember. Diplomats from ancient Byzantium to modern UN chambers share a hidden weapon, not rhetoric or force, but the strategic pause. That breath between provocation and response is where Stoic stillness transforms conflict. Hostage negotiators call it creating non-reactive space, the deliberate refusal to mirror another's chaos. When a captor screams threats, the trained negotiator's voice drops lower, their words slower, not out of passivity but precision. They know what Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his war journal: choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. The insult, the accusation, even the gun pointed your way, they only gain power when met with equal heat. History's most pivotal negotiations turned on this principle. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, as generals urged immediate strikes, President Kennedy insisted on quarantine over blockade, a linguistic pause that gave Khrushchev room to de-escalate without losing face. Centuries earlier, Byzantine emperors facing barbarian hordes would delay responses by days, letting messengers rest and feast before delivering replies. The message wasn't in the words, it was in the unshaken tempo. Haste is the mark of insecurity, Seneca observed. The secure mind moves with gravity. Modern psychology confirms this ancient instinct. When faced with aggression, the human brain mirrors the other's emotional state unless interrupted by conscious stillness. Police de-escalation training teaches officers to speak in curves, not angles, softening tone and posture to avoid triggering primal fight or flight responses. It's not about conceding ground, it's about refusing to let the opponent's nervous system dictate the terms. So where's your negotiation today? Not with foreign powers, perhaps, but with the co-worker who dominates meetings, the relative who baits arguments, even the inner voice that amplifies every slight. The next time tension flares, try the Stoic negotiator's drill. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. That's not just breathing, it's reclaiming sovereignty over the moment. Epictetus, who knew slavery firsthand, framed it best. No one can enslave your mind without your consent. The pause is where you withhold yours. Stoics didn't suppress joy, they purified its source. While modern culture chases euphoria in grand achievements or fleeting pleasures, the Stoics found something far more enduring: eudaimonia, a deep-seated flourishing that arises from alignment with one's highest self. Seneca captured it perfectly. No man is happy who does not think himself so. Happiness, in this light, isn't something that happens to you. It's something you cultivate by choosing how to interpret your life. Picture 2 people stuck in the same rainstorm. One curses their soaked clothes, the other laughs, turning their face to the sky, remembering childhood puddle jumping. Same rain, different joy. Modern psychology echoes this ancient insight. Researchers studying flow states, those moments of complete absorption in an activity, find that joy arises not from external rewards, but from the harmony of focus and purpose. A musician lost in a riff, a gardener tending soil, even a programmer debugging code at 2 a.m. These aren't just productive moments, they're glimpses of Stoic eudaimonia. Joy divorced from circumstance, flowing from full engagement with the present. But here's where Stoicism parts ways with pop positivity. It doesn't deny hardship or paste on a smile. It asks a harder question: what if joy isn't the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning? Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while battling chronic illness, yet his journals brim with gratitude for simple things: the warmth of sunlight, the sound of a child's laughter. His joy wasn't in spite of suffering. It was rooted in something no suffering could touch, the unshakable conviction that his life had weight. Think of Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz, finding fleeting moments of connection with fellow prisoners. Or Nelson Mandela, who emerged from 27 years in prison not with bitterness, but with a quiet radiance that disarmed his oppressors. Their joy wasn't naive, it was strategic, a refusal to let external darkness extinguish their inner light. So here's the invitation. What simple moment brought you joy today? Not the big win or the dopamine hit, but the unnoticed grace, the first sip of coffee, the way your dog sighs when it curls beside you, even the satisfaction of crossing off a mundane task. The Stoics would urge you to linger there, not to ignore life's storms, but to anchor yourself in the quiet certainty that joy, like stillness, is an inside job. As Epictetus reminded us, happiness doesn't depend on what happens outside of you, but on what happens inside you. The secret isn't in chasing more. It's in seeing deeper. Peripatetic philosophers thought on foot, so did Thoreau. There's something about the rhythm of walking that unravels the knots in the mind, a truth the Stoics knew well. Seneca's Latin phrase solvitur ambulando, it is solved by walking, wasn't just poetic flair, it was clinical advice for the restless soul. Picture him pacing the colonnades of Rome, sandals scuffing marble as he untangled ethical dilemmas step by step. The body in motion, he found, could quiet the chaos within. Fast forward to Silicon Valley, where Steve Jobs turned walking meetings into a ritual. No conference rooms, no screens, just two pairs of shoes crunching gravel as ideas flowed freely. Neuroscientists now understand why this works. The bilateral stimulation of walking synchronizes brain hemispheres, unlocking creativity in ways sitting never could. But Jobs wasn't innovating, he was channeling an ancient practice. Thoreau wandered Walden's woods not to escape civilization, but to think like one, his feet tracing the same paths as Marcus Aurelius, who wrote his clearest meditations on military marches. Here's the paradox: movement can deepen stillness. A monk in seated meditation battles distractions, but a monk in walking meditation, each step a conscious press of heel to earth, finds focus in the body's gentle cadence. The Stoics called this kinetic contemplation. When your legs move, your mind stops circling. Problems that seemed insurmountable at a desk unravel when met with open air and motion. So where could your next problem meet your footsteps? Not a distracted stroll with phone in hand, but deliberate motion, the kind where the rustle of leaves or the rhythm of your breath becomes the only soundtrack. Maybe it's the unresolved tension in a project, the creative block you've been forcing, or simply the weight of a decision that needs space to breathe. Epictetus, who taught while pacing Athens streets, would urge you to walk not away from the struggle, but into it. Let the cadence of your stride become the metronome for your thoughts. The modern world tells us to sit, to stare, to scroll. The Stoics whisper, rise, walk, and let the path beneath you remind your mind how to move forward. Stillness is the silent architecture of every great decision, the invisible fulcrum on which empires and ordinary lives alike find their balance. From Marcus Aurelius scribbling wisdom by torchlight to modern leaders navigating boardrooms and burnout, the thread remains unbroken. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quietest voice in the room, the one that pauses before speaking, that steps back before advancing, that refuses to let chaos dictate its rhythm. Think of it as the ancient art of leverage. A lever doesn't strain, it positions itself deliberately, then lets physics do the rest. That's the essence of Stoic stillness, not passivity, but precision. The practices we've traced: pausing before reaction, detaching from what you can't control, reflecting nightly like Seneca with his candle, aren't just tools. They're acts of rebellion against a world that confuses speed with strength. Consider the surgeon whose steady hands save lives, not because they move fastest, but because they know when to hover, when to wait, when to let the moment ripen. Or the parent who kneels to meet a child's tantrum with calm instead of matching its volume. These aren't moments of weakness, they're demonstrations of a deeper kind of control, the kind Marcus wrote of when he reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But here's the beautiful paradox. This power isn't reserved for emperors or CEOs. It's found in the smallest gestures, the single intentional breath before answering a provoking text. The decision to leave one notification unread, reclaiming a sliver of attention, even the glance away from a screen to watch sunlight stretch across a wall. These are the modern-day equivalents of Marcus Dawn meditation's micro-moments where you exercise sovereignty over your inner world. So where do you begin? Not with grand resolutions, but with tiny, unwavering acts. Like a sculptor chiseling a masterpiece, you start with the first deliberate strike. Today, let it be something simple, a 5-second pause before reacting to bad news. A walk around the block without your phone, one sentence in a journal asking, "What did I cure today?" The Stoics didn't build their resilience in a day. They fortified it breath by breath, thought by thought, until their stillness became unshakable. As the noise of the world grows louder, the need for this ancient skill only deepens. If these ideas resonated with you, consider subscribing not just for more content, but for a lifeline to wisdom in an age of distraction. Because the quieter you learn to be, the more clearly you'll hear the voice that matters most.